ॐ सहनौ भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Having seen up to the frequency, intensity, and the recovery of the six, we are now moving on to another two aspects of the intellect. The diagnostics tools in relation to the intellect is what we are be going to see today. And then we'll be moving on to how what is the solution, which is the 3-year course, and how the 3-year course helps in strengthening the intellect. We'll be discussing that and we conclude. This is the sequence that we are going to follow for the next couple of sessions. So here, the diagnostic tool in relation to the intellect. The diagnostic tool in relation to the intellect is the distinction between the essentials and the non-essentials. The distinction between what is essential and what is non-essential. Lack of intellect would be focusing on the non-essential aspects, and the intellect would be focusing on the essentials. These are the distinct factors. Again, I repeat, the lack of intellect will be focusing on the non-essentials, and the intellect would know how to distinguish between essential and non-essential. So here we are going to see a few, not a comprehensive list, a few examples of what is the essential and what is the non-essential, and how intellect would be able to understand it rightly. So the few aspects of essentials and non-essentials of life, we will be talking about education, wealth, marriage, religion, discipline. What is the essential and what is the non-essential, and how people focus on the non-essential and lose sight of the essential. First, we will take up education. For analysis purpose, we will take up education. What is the essential aspect of education and what is the non-essential aspect of education? The non-essential aspect of education is which university, which country. These are all the non-essential aspect of education. Then comes the essential aspect of education. And what is the essential aspect of education? An intellect would know how to distinguish between the two. People not knowing this distinction due to this lack of intellect, they would be entirely focusing on the non-essential aspects of education. What is the essential aspect of education? The essential aspect of education is defined as the capacity, the ability to do a thing when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. That is the essential aspect of education. Again, I repeat, the essential aspect of education is the capacity to do a thing when it ought to be done, whether you like it or not. This is the essential aspect of education. Then comes the non-essential aspect of education. The non-essential aspect of education is lot of emphasis is made upon the course, the university, the country, and having gotten this education, the human being comes out what in the modern day terminology they call as educated illiterates. They have coined a word. They are called educated illiterates. One is the uneducated illiterate. Another one is the educated illiterate. And uneducated illiterates are very easy to deal with. The educated illiterates is such a difficult. You just can't handle them. Why? Because they focused so much on the non-essential aspect, and taking the non-essential aspect as the essential, they believe they are educated. They believe they are educated because they have focused on the non-essential aspects and they highlight the non-essential aspects. Another example of lack of intellect is the distinction between what is the essential aspect of wealth and what is the non-essential aspect of wealth. Intellect says there are these two things first. There is this thing called essential and the non-essential. First is to recognize that there are these two. And then we say what is the essential and what is the... Now we are discussing about wealth. What is the essential aspect of wealth and what is the non-essential aspect of wealth? What wealth can give you and what wealth cannot give you. Supposing the question is asked, is education necessary for life? The answer is, you can neither say yes, because you look at all the problems of the world, all are caused by the educated people. So looks like education is not needed. And you look at the other species, they live such a stress-free life without any education. So if you ask, is education important or not? It is yes or no. The answer is, it is yes and no. You can never answer yes or no. It is always yes and no. No in the non-essential aspects, yes when it concerns the essential. Similarly, is wealth important for life? Yes or no? You can never say yes, nor you can say no. Supposing if you say yes, wealth is the most important factor of life. If somebody says yes, wealth is the important factor of life, that person doesn't know what one is saying. And if you say wealth is not necessary at all, again that person doesn't know what he or she is saying, because it is essential, at the same time it is non-essential. Now you need to know the distinction. You are what you are is not because of what you have. You are what you are is not because of what you have. You are what you are is because of the strength or weakness of your intellect. And wealth, what wealth gives? With wealth, you can buy objects. If you have to buy an object, you need wealth. Is objects necessary? Yes, objects are necessary. If objects are necessary, you need to buy it. And if you need to buy it, wealth is necessary. Therefore, Vedanta doesn't say wealth is not necessary. It doesn't speak the language. It says you should know what it can give and what it cannot give. What wealth can give? With wealth, you can buy an exercise machine. If you have a wealth, you can buy an exercise machine. In order to become healthy, you have to exercise on the machine, using the machine. So buying the machine is not buying health. If you have wealth, you can buy a machine. If you buy the machine, you are not buying health. Second aspect of wealth. If you have wealth, you can hire people. If you have wealth, you can hire people. And when you hire people for their skill. But what you cannot hire with wealth? You can hire a person with skill, but what you cannot hire with wealth? You can never hire sincerity, dedication, loyalty, all that cannot be hired. With wealth, you cannot buy dedication. With wealth, you cannot buy sincerity. With wealth, you cannot buy loyalty. So you understand, with wealth, you can hire a person. You can hire a person with the skill, technical skill, academic skill, semi-skilled, unskilled. There are so many categories of skill, no? You can hire, but what you cannot hire is you cannot hire dedication. You cannot hire loyalty. You cannot hire sincerity. So with wealth, you understand what you can hire people and what you will get and what you will not get. So you have the right understanding. What is the right understanding? You won't expect the person to be, the person is dedicated, sincere. If the person is dedicated, sincere and loyal, it means that person has some higher values in life. If the person is insincere, no dedication, no values, no loyalty, means that person doesn't have a value and you cannot hire that with wealth. So the second aspect. First is you can buy objects. Buying the object is not buying happiness. Buying the object is not buying happiness. Happiness comes when you are mentally available to enjoy that acquisition. Buying the object itself is not, and the misunderstanding that people have is, if you buy object, they believe that happiness is bought. And that's what I said already. Happiness is not dependent on what you have. Happiness is dependent on what you are. With wealth, you can buy books. With wealth, you can buy books. And buying books is not buying knowledge. You can even hire a person to come and teach. You can buy a person to come and teach you, but knowledge cannot be bought through wealth. So you understand what wealth can give and what wealth cannot give. Wealth is a commodity that is useful for transactions, but wealth has got nothing to do with happiness. That is the essential and the non-essential aspect of wealth. Another important area where people have misunderstanding about essential and non-essential is marriage. What is the non-essential aspects of marriage? The event manager. The event manager who's going to who's going to conduct the wedding. That company or the individual is the non-essential. The muhurta is the non-essential. The marriage hall is the non-essential. And full of emphasis and focus is made on these non-essential aspects. And what is the essential aspect of marriage? The essential aspect of marriage is the ability to be accommodative and sacrificial with one person. Just one person in life, we are able to accommodate one person in life, and we are able to be sacrificial in relation to one person. That is the essential aspect of marriage. And what is the non-essential aspect of marriage? Rest of the paraphernalia that go along with marriage is the non-essential aspect of marriage. And where is the focus? The entire focus is on the non-essentials, and the essential is forgotten. more the emphasis on the non-essential, less the time you will spend on the essential. That is as far as the marriage is concerned. The last thing is religion. What is the essential aspect of religion and what is the non-essential aspect of religion? Vivekananda, in one of the lectures, he says, what is the non-essential aspect of religion? He says, the entire religion is confined to the kitchen, he says. The entire religion is confined to the kitchen. Confined to the kitchen means what to cook, what not to cook, maximum in which vessel to cook. Now, these are all the non-essential aspects of religion. And what is the essential aspect of religion? The essential aspect of religion is the three disciplines of karma, action, bhakti, refined emotion, and jnanam, pure knowledge. That is the essential aspect of bhakti. The non-essential aspect of the non-essential aspect of religion is all the other practices that is associated with it. Now, what people do, again, the same mistake. They focus so much on the non-essential aspect of religion, the essential is forgotten. What is the distinction between focusing on the non-essential and discarding the essential? Swamiji gives this example. You discard the chocolate and keep the container that comes, isn't it? Now, there is the chocolate that comes in a beautiful container. So people discard the chocolate and keep the container. What can you talk to that person? The container is because of the value of the container is because of the chocolate inside. So it is the essential that brings meaning to the other external factors. So what do you understand from this? To lead a meaningful life, distinguishing between essential and non-essential, intellect is very much important. From this, we derive that. What do we derive? To lead a meaningful life, you need this instrument intellect, because it is the intellect alone that would be able to distinguish between these two. That is as far as the essentials and the non-essentials are concerned. So quickly, what is the essential aspect of education? What is the non-essential aspect of education? What is the essential aspect of marriage and what is the non-essential aspect of marriage? What is the essential aspect of wealth and what is the non-essential aspect of wealth? What is the essential aspect of religion and what are the non-essential aspects of religion? You can ask yourself this question. And the answer that you come up with determines the strength of your, the strength or weaknesses of a strength or weakness of your intellect. This is one diagnostic tool when it comes to the practical application of the intellect. Then the next one with reference to the intellect is the quality of the intellect and the stages by which the intellect grows. When we look at the 4 stages of the intellect and when we look at the quality of the intellect, you know that is another important diagnostic tool. So now we will see this. See the board, you will see the stages and grades of intellect. Grades mean quality of the intellect. Grade refers to quality. The quality of the intellect is of 3, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. We will come to that. We will see everything in detail. Before we go on to the quality, we will see what are the 4 stages of intellectual growth. The four stages are: number 1, age of perception, gazing; number 2, age of superstition; number 3, age of scientific inquiry; number 4, age of contemplation. These are the four stages of the development of human intellect. The first stage is known as age of perception, gazing. Second one is age of superstition. The third one, the age of scientific inquiry. The fourth one, the age of contemplation. We'll go one by one. First one, what is the age of perception? Age of perception is where the intellect sees, where the, not the intellect, where the human being sees and go by what one sees. That is known as the age of perception. What is seen is taken to be the truth. What is seen is taken to be the truth. When the intellect lives this kind of life, it is known as the age of perception. What is seen is taken as truth. What is heard is taken as truth without any inquiry process at all. This is called the age of perception. And intellect at the very early stages is at this age of perception. For each stage, I will give one example. One story, one example I'll give. So you can remember the story, you can remember the example. From the story, that example you remember, you can come back to the concept, the four stages. The first stage, what is this age of gazing? You see something and whatever you see is taken for real, granted. That's why in the development of intellect, it is said, do not take things for granted, meaning move out of the age of perception. What is being stuck at the age of perception? According to the Western sciences, astronomy, for 1,500, 2,000 years, people believed. What did they believe? That Earth is the center and sun revolves around the Earth. For 1,500, 2,000 years, humanity believed that Earth is the center and sun revolves around the Earth. It was a known, accepted fact and no need to think about it at all. Why? Because it is very obvious, it's very clear. How can you be so obvious and so clear? You stand in the same position, you see the sun coming up the horizon, move up, 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 up. At one point of time, straight above your head, and then goes on the other side and disappears. It's not one day, it's not 2 days, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, this is what is happening. From this, what is very clear? What is very obvious? What is very clear? It is the Earth that is the center and sun revolves around the Earth. One person asked, maybe it is not the sun that is moving, maybe it is the Earth that is moving. What that person would have faced in that generation when he posed this question? What that generation would have called him? That generation would have called him an insane person. So in 1500s, Copernicus, the first man to say that you guys have been wrong all along. It is the sun that is the center and Earth is that which is revolving around the sun. And this is history. What I'm saying is history. And you know what happened to that man? What they did to Copernicus, anybody knows? Or maybe you can check afterward. Google, you can check. Because whatever is said, Google has to certify, no? Anything that is said in the class also, Google has to certify. So I have to Google check before I say anything, isn't it? Because in Google it is said something like what to do. So Copernicus is the first person. And what happened to Copernicus for this discovery? He was tied to the post in the middle of the town and burnt alive. This is what happened to Copernicus. And all that he said is what? What did he say? It is the earth that revolves around the sun, which is against perception. 25 years later, Galileo, another scientist, came and said the same thing. It is the sun that is the center and earth revolves around the sun. Again, Galileo was called by the same set of people. And he was asked this question. What is the question he was asked? We heard that you have published some papers in the Science magazine. What is it? Galileo said, it is the sun is the center and earth revolves around the sun. They said, 25 years back, one man said the same thing. And you know what happened to him? Galileo said, I don't know. They showed him the post. The post was still there. They showed him the post. They said, he was tied to this post and burnt alive. And then they asked Galileo this question. What are you saying? And Galileo has an intellect. Huh? Galileo instantly asked, what do you want me to say? Galileo instantly asked, what do you want me to say? They said, accept that you are wrong. And Galileo said, yes, I accept that I am wrong. No, just saying is not enough. You have to give it in writing. And Galileo gave it in writing. It's called the letter of apology. Galileo gave it in writing. Whatever they wanted him to write, he wrote. And finally, he asked them, can I write a footnote? He asked, can I write a footnote? Footnote, you understand, no? It will be printed in such a small letter that even with a magnifying glass, you can't read it. But the entire thing is resting on that. That's called a footnote. Like the front page advertisement. %70 off. The whole page advertisement says 70% off. And then there will be a small asterisk mark somewhere saying TNC apply. And what the TNC is, you won't know what the TNC is. That fellow won't know what the TNC means, terms and conditions. Okay. Our love is also like that, TNC apply. Even our love has this TNC apply. Because according to terms and conditions only, love also happens. Galileo said, allow me to write a footnote. And he wrote a beautiful footnote. Now I am quoting Galileo within quotes. He writes, the sun and the earth doesn't listen to you and me. You want to understand the footnote, you need an intellect, isn't it? He writes, in the footnote, he writes, the sun and the earth doesn't listen to you and me. Meaning what? You can say what do you want. You can believe in what I want. I can say what I want. I can believe in what I want. There is a law that keeps functioning. There is a law that keeps functioning. And that law is beyond perceptions. There is a law that is functioning and that law is beyond perception. Since it is the law that is beyond perception, you need an intellect. So what is age of perception now? Intellect taking things for granted. Whatever it sees, it takes it for granted. So the first stage of intellect, what is the story for the first stage of intellect? Put it as Galileo's footnote. Then you'll remember the entire story. The second stage, from the age of perception, gazing, the intellect evolves to the second stage, which is much better than the age of gazing. What is it called? That is called the age of superstition. And what is the definition of superstition? the definition of superstition is wrong correlation of cause and effect. You see an effect, and when you correlate it with the wrong cause, that wrong correlating cause and effect is called superstition. Much better than the age of perception. Huh? Why do we say it is much better? Because at least some correlation has started to, some thinking has started to happen, some correlation has started to happen, but it is wrongly getting correlated. But at least it is better than the first stage. What does age of superstition means? Every individual, every family, every society, every country has their own set of superstitions, isn't it? What is superstition? Children have what is known as lucky pen, isn't it? Did anyone have lucky pen? They have lucky pen. They have lucky dress, isn't it? They have lucky pen. They have lucky dress. And before the start of the exam, I don't have a pen here. So imagine this to be the pen. And before the start of the exam, what will they do? They go, they go, isn't it? Lucky. And you understand that the pen has got nothing to do with that pen has got nothing to do with the exam, the question paper, or the result. But people believe in that. It is called the age of superstition. It is all right for a child to believe in that. It is all right for a child. If the adult also does it, what to do? This is called the age of superstition. What is the oft-quoted example for the age of superstition? A person went on a business. That business didn't succeed. That person came back and started thinking why the business didn't succeed. He went on a business. It didn't succeed. He came back and started thinking, where did I go wrong? What went wrong that the business didn't succeed? And he came to the conclusion. What is the conclusion? When he stepped out of the house, a black cat crossed. So that black cat crossing is the cause. Business didn't succeed is the effect. Cause and effect. Wrongly correlating cause and effect. You understand that for the business to fail, there may be other reasons, but definitely not the cat, correct? Suppose you say, no, sir, in our practical experience, sir, we have experienced sometimes where everything I did right except the cat. That's why we say you need to do the 3-year course. That's why you have to do the 3-year course in order to develop in order to understand the intellect, to understand that the age of superstition is a development of intellect, but still very poor intellect. Why? Because you will be correlating cause and effect wrongly. Literally, in one of the houses, it's a practical experience. A practical experience I had. I was staying in one of the houses for 2 weeks. I had some work, so I had to stay in their house for 2 weeks. And it's a proper North Indian family. Morning on the breakfast table, when we sat for breakfast, the breakfast given was idli. And I don't know whether you have eaten. The North Indian making idli is like my grandmother making chapati. Only she calls it as chapati. It is nowhere near. It's nowhere near that, but she calls it as that. And that idli has to be soaked in hot water first. And then it has to be melted. And then only you can eat. By the time you finish eating 2 idlis, you can't eat for the rest of the day. You cannot eat. I managed. First day, I managed. Second day, breakfast, idli again. It's too much. I managed. Third day, Breakfast, again idli. That I couldn't manage anymore. My objective level only for 2 days I could. Third day I went and told that lady, see, can't you see I am suffering, you are suffering, everybody is suffering eating that idli. Why can't you make normal? Yeah, normal food that we all, why do you make it? No, sir. There's a child in the house. Her name is Anjali. Anjali has got exams, sir. And whenever Anjali has exams, we make idlis. I said, oh. And don't think Anjali is going for second standard exam. Huh? She is not going for second standard, third standard exam. She is going for her final year MD exam she is writing. Final year MD exams and idlis. I thought, why idlis are made? Because, this nowadays, so much of technological research goes into food, no? This much grams of this much grams of that. Beyond a point, you read all that, you don't feel like eating anything only. It's worth dying then. It's easier to die than to live eating food like this. So I genuinely thought maybe some mystical thing is there in the idli for breakfast, because breakfast you eat a light food, you can concentrate, because people come up with their own theories of everything, no. So I thought something like, so I asked why. No, sir, we can't. I can't tell you the real reason. And if anybody says I can't tell you the real reason, what is the natural instinct? You will turn the earth upside down to know what happened. No. So I also tried everything to know what happened, and finally I succeeded. What happened? When she went for her first year MD exams, on one particular day, she had idli and went. That day, examination was very easy. From that day onwards, whenever examination happens, breakfast has to be idli. I said, I will die, but I will not come to you for treatment, I told her. Even if I get a heart attack, I will die, but I will not come to you for treatment. What is the connection between idli and the question paper and the examination results? But people have this, and the superstitions are taken as facts. From the age of perception, the intellect evolves to the age of superstition. From the age of superstition, the intellect evolves to the third stage, what is known as the age of scientific inquiry. What does scientific inquiry means? Scientific inquiry means making an effort to correlate it with the right cause and the right effect. The effort, the inquiry that is done to correlate with the right cause and the right effect is called the age of scientific inquiry. And all human evolution, when I say human evolution, means the betterment of human life happened because of the scientific inquiry, because of the advancement of the scientific inquiry. Life has become better and better in terms of amenities and facilities for a human being is because of the age of scientific inquiry. What was it 100 years back? What was it 50 years back? What was it 10 years back? And what is it now? 50 years back, I don't know that. I have only heard stories of this. 50 years back, if you see of somebody at the railway station, what is the last thing that you have to tell them, that you will tell them? Once you reach safely, write a letter that you have reached safely. That is the last sentence. And the train takes 3 days to go. And then in the journey and so many things they have to do, they will forget that they have to write a letter. So at the end of the 7th day, they will remember to write a letter, and they will write a letter. And the letter reaches you 5 days later. It means 15th day only you will come to know whether that person has reached safely or not. Isn't it? Today, you can track the person live, no? Isn't it? Today, you can track the person live. And first time when I know these phones and all tracking people and all, I didn't know because I'm not so tech this thing. Suddenly, one of my friend called me and said, "Hey, you are in that street. No, buy something, buy this and come." I asked, wait, how did you even know that I'm in the street? Because I didn't tell anybody that I'm going. He said, you are here. No, buy this and come. How did you know that I'm in the street? No. Friends tracking. I don't know what the tracking thing is. First thing I gave it to somebody. I said, remove the tracking. Minute to minute, second to second, you can know where that person is. The advancement in life is because of the scientific inquiry. The king who ruled the world 150 years back, if he were to come alive, he will be very jealous of the ordinary person now. You know that? The king who ruled the world, 150 years back, 200 years back, if he were to come alive today, he will be very jealous of the ordinary person. Why he'll be very jealous of the ordinary person? Because amenities and facilities of the ordinary person today is much, much better than what the king had 150 years back. Isn't it? Even if he was the king, he still has to ride on a horseback, no? Even though he was the king, he has to ride on the horseback, breaking his back, and to communicate. What he has to depend upon? He has to depend upon the pigeons, not knowing whether the pigeon will go and deliver and come back. You know, when, again, I'm giving another example from history. Yeah? For all the 4 stages, I told you I'll give you one story, no? And you'll say, sir, your stories are better than. Yes, your storytelling session is much better than the concepts, sir. So we'll have more stories only. Aurangzeb, the Mughal king, was in Delhi. His wife was giving birth in Agra. And he wanted to know immediately. As soon as the child is born, he wanted to know. In those days, what is the distance between Agra and Delhi? What about our 100 and odd kilometers? 120, 140 kilometers, something like that, between Agra and Delhi. Now, how? Even if somebody starts running and reach there, it will take hours, even the horse. He wanted it faster. So what they did, they made drummers stand every 200 feet. Every 200 feet, there will be a drummer. They appointed drummers. As soon as the child is born in the palace in Agra, the fellow will start drumming. Hearing that sound, the next fellow will drum. Hearing that. So in a matter of 45 minutes, Aurangzeb will come to know that the child is born. Impossible to believe humanity lived a life that, and he is the king of the whole. Impossible to believe, no? Scientific inquiry. They drummed. Aurangzeb heard the drum and he asked a very logical question for which there was no answer. What is the logical question? Fatal communication error. It's all documented in history. Fatal communication error. Aurangzeb asked, boy or girl? Naturally, you will want to ask, no, child is born. Natural question that you will want to ask it, boy or girl? Again, they have to start drumming back. Huh? That is how that king lived. Because of the advancement of scientific inquiry, we are living in an era of facilities, amenities, and comforts. Age of contemplation. The 4th stage is what Vedanta we are aiming at in these classes. Through these courses, we are aiming at the 4th stage. What is the 4th stage of development of intellect? The fourth stage of development of intellect is called the age of contemplation. And what is this age of contemplation? Age of contemplation is a state where it is one of self-enquiry. You understand that life has become better. The qualities and amenities of life has turned better, but the individual is still living a disturbed life. That's why I said, if the king were to come back alive, he will tell every one of us what the king will say. He will say, you are all so lucky to have been born in this time. Even the heaven I am in doesn't have the amenities and facilities that you are having, because even in the heaven, only one comes, either Netflix or Prime Video. Here you have everything. You have Netflix, you have Prime, you have Dish, you have FM radio, you have this. You see, you said, wow, what a life you people are having. You people must all be very happy, joyful, and peaceful. The king will ask us this question, and what we will give as an answer? We will say, we are thinking your life was better than our life. Why? Because intellect has to evolve to the fourth stage. And Vedanta aims at bringing the intellect to the fourth and final stage of development. That's where the proper course is very important. It's designed in such a way that it lifts you to the level of, it lifts the intellect up to the fourth stage. What is the fourth stage? The age of contemplation. So for age of perception, I gave you one story. What is that story? Galileo. For age of superstition, another story. What? Idli, correct. Correct. Aparna, correct. Idli, that is the right. You give Idli. Age of scientific inquiry, Aurangzeb. Put that. No? Aurangzeb drumming. You put that. Age of contemplation, Vedanta. These are the four stages in which the intellect develops. The age of perception, age of superstition, the age of scientific inquiry, and the age of contemplation. These are the four stages. So, first thing in relation to the intellect is the essentials and the non-essentials. The second thing in relation to the intellect is, you can ask yourself, what is the stage in which the intellect is? Is it at the perception? Is it at the superstition? Is it at the inquiry? Is it at the contemplative state? Most of the time it will be a mixture of the first three. Most of it will be a mixture of the first three. Scientific temperament and all is very less. Because you can be a scientist and be a superstitious scientist, no? Isn't it? Even you can be a very superstitious scientist also. Therefore, age of scientific inquiry itself is very difficult in the true sense of the term. But you don't stop with that, you evolve to the fourth stage. And Vedanta aids in evolving to the fourth and final stage, what is known as age of contemplation. Then comes the very important thing, the quality of the intellect. What is known as the grades of the intellect. If you see the board, you can see that. It's known as the quality grades of intellect. Grades of intellect means, grade means quality. What is the quality of the intellect? Sattvic, the three qualities. Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. In the Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he talks about these three intellect. The Sattvic intellect, the Rajasic intellect, and the Tamasic intellect. The three qualities of the intellect. To briefly discuss this, it's called guna in Sanskrit. Guna means quality. The quality of the intellect. Sattvic quality, Rajasic quality, and Tamasic quality. You understand Sattva and Rajas, absence of these two becomes Tamas. I'll try to quickly simplify these three. You understand Sattva, you understand Rajas, and then what is Tamas? Wherever these two is not there, that is called Tamas. The absence of Sattva and Rajas is Tamas. Now, what is Sattva? Sattva is equanimity, is Sattva. Equanimous actions, equanimous existence is Sattva. Agitated actions, agitated existence is called Rajas. When equanimity is also not there, when agitations is also not there, then what is happening? There is no equanimity, there is no agitation, then what is there? Can anybody derive the third one? Equanimity is not there. Agitations is also not there. Then what is there? After 8 weeks, I'm asking one question. Normally, in all other classes, we keep asking questions. Here, we decided that at least in the last 2 sessions, let us put some. When these two are not there, what is left behind? Sleepiness. Because a sleeping person is neither agitated nor equanimous. Therefore, tamas is a state of sleep. So, what is tamas? A state of sleep. Not physical sleep. It means physical sleep also. It means physical sleep also. But here we are talking about the mental textures, the mental quality, not the physical thing. So what is sattva? Sattva is equanimity and active. So equanimous action, or you can add another adjective. Equanimous dynamic action is sattva. You can put it like that also. So what is sattva guna? Equanimous dynamic action equals sattva guna. What is rajoguna? Agitated actions is rajoguna. When you are agitated, what is the natural tendency? When you are agitated, the natural tendency is to run away from that which causes agitations. The natural tendency is to run away from that which causes agitations. So from the state of rajas, the mind slips naturally to the state of tamas. What is tamas? Tamas is a state of inaction. So equanimity in action, disturbed, agitated action, and inaction. Inaction means always looking for an opportunity to quickly finish the action, quickly stop the action. Ideally, don't start the action. If at all you have to start, how quickly to end it? That is tamoguna. Rajoguna is be in action, but the very fact that you have to be in action causes tremendous agitations, worry and anxiety. Now connect it to the mind, the definitions of the mind. It becomes clear. What is Sattva Guna? Sattva Guna is you are equanimous. Equanimity doesn't mean you will be sitting like Buddha in meditation. Huh? That's not equanimous. How equanimous means we'll be sitting like Buddha in meditation. Equanimous in actions. Equanimous action means equanimous dynamic action. These are the three qualities. Intellect has these three qualities: sattvic intellect, rajasic intellect, and tamasic intellect. And we'll be concluding the 9th. Today is the 8th session, isn't it? Correct, 8th session then indicate. Yeah. So we'll be concluding the 9th session with the discussions on sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic intellect. 10th session about the course and the benefits of the courses, etc. That would be the last session. So we'll be continuing the quality of intellect discussion onto the next session also. But for today, to understand that grade means quality, quality means the three. What are the three? Sattva, Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. The aim of Vedanta is to eliminate tamas, keep rajas, keep minimum rajas alive, and promote sattva guna. The aim of Vedanta, the purpose of developing the intellect is for what? Eliminate the tamoguna, keep rajoguna as minimum as possible, because it is rajoguna that drives the action, and predominantly be sattvic by nature. And to bring about this shift, intellect is essential. So the quality of the intellect. What is the quality of the intellect? The three qualities. I am not yet defining what is sattvic, rajasic intellect and tamasic intellect. That is left for the next session. The sattvic intellect, rajasic intellect, and tamasic intellect we will be discussing in the next session. But for today, only 3 points. One is the essentials and the non-essentials, the stages of growth of intellect, the stages of growth of intellect as in age of perception, age of superstition, age of scientific inquiry, and the age of contemplation. That is the 4 stages of intellect. Then finally, we come to the quality of the intellect. What is the quality of the intellect? Poor, mediocre, best. If sattva, rajas, and tamas is not very comfortable, you can call it as the best quality, the mediocre quality, and the poor quality. The poor quality is tamoguna. The mediocre quality is rajoguna. The best quality is sattva guna. And the focus here is on making it sattvic. And intellect plays the vital important role in helping a person evolve to sattva guna. There, the 3 grades, the 3 qualities of the intellect: the sattvic, the rajasic, and the tamasic. With this distinction, we conclude the session for today, and we continue with the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic intellect on to the next session.
Krishnan has posted a question.
Krishnan has posted a question. Will a sattvic person have the other 2 gunas? Yes. Krishnan. They will have the other 2 gunas. A sattvic person, a human being, is a necessary combination of all the 3 gunas. what decides is the predominant. The predominance of the guna determines whether that person is a sattvic person or a rajasic person or a tamasic person. So, will a sattvic person have the other two gunas? Yes. Because of the predominance of the sattva guna, the other two gunas will lose their viryam. Because of the presence of the highest, noblest guna, the remaining rajoguna and the remaining tamoguna will lose its strength, its vitality in viryam in front of these two guna, in front of the sattva guna. So to answer your question, a sattvic person will have the other two gunas. Is it okay, Krishnan? Yes.
Hi, good evening, Swami.
Yeah, good evening.
So, we work now from Monday to Friday, but we look forward to the weekend because, I think so that's moving from Rajasic to Tamasic, right? Because on the weekend,
Exactly.
you're so agitated Monday to Friday, you just want to relax, do nothing, and then you're even bothered on a Monday morning that, have to start again agitation.
Exactly.
So actually we're moving from Rajasic to Tamasic, looks like.
Yes. Yes.
And then is it because whatever we are doing is not as per our Swadharma, and because that's why we don't look forward to it, or we don't have the right understanding, or there is one earning and there is one living, right? So
Yes.
then if you know your Swadharma, these two get merged,
Yes.
so that it becomes Sattvic, like just some clarity there.
Yeah. Now, first thing, you are very right. Friday evenings, the love-hate relationship with Friday evening. You love the Friday evening because of the Saturday. And because Monday is going to come in a very short time, it's very difficult. Correct. That is moving from, that's a very good connection. That is moving from Rajas to Tamas. Because Rajas is exhausting. Rajas fatigues. The Rajoguna, which is the mental agitations, the worry and anxiety, fatigues. Now, when you are fatigued, the natural tendency to stop is to stop working. That's why we call as rest, inertia, tamas. Sattva guna says it is not the action that is causing the stress. It is not the work from Monday to Friday that is causing the stress. It is your own lack of understanding. One, Swadharma. Swadharma aids in action in a particular way. What is a particular way? There is a natural liking to it. Resistance is less. When you do an action out of Swadharma, there is a less resistance. But still, that alone is not a guarantee. You have to employ the intellect in the Swadharmic field, then only it works. Just taking the field of activity that you like itself doesn't guarantee this. Why? Because when we saw likes and dislikes, we saw that the nature of likes and dislikes is such that it keeps fluctuating, it keeps changing. So you cannot, though Swadharma is a very important facet, but we don't place so much of emphasis on Swadharma. We place a lot of emphasis on doing the right action in the chosen field of activity. And to do that, you need a strong intellect, and intellect develops only through knowledge. There is no other way to develop the intellect other than knowledge. So it is the intellect that is strengthened through the study and reflection on Vedantic principles, becomes the intellect is strong, and that strong intellect would guide the actions rightly. So that in one of the books, Swamiji calls it as what Vedanta does From thank God it's Friday, it will move on to thank God it's Monday. What the intellect will do? From thank God it's Friday, it will move on to thank God it is Monday. Now, if a person says thank God it is Monday, now house is becoming too much of a problematic, isn't it? That's why the person says thank God it is Monday. Not in that sense. You follow, Puneet? It is not just the Swadharma alone. It is the intellect guiding the Swadharmic actions.
So is it then gathering that knowledge, or is it removing the ignorance? Is it, or is it both?
It is two sides to the same coin. You can call it as removal of ignorance, or you can call it as acquiring knowledge.
Because sometimes you feel, oh, now we have the clarity. That means you knew this for some reason, you have the knowledge, but maybe you were looking at the other side of it.
See, now that you have said it, I'll give you the definition. Knowledge remains the same. Your clarity grows. Gravity, the law of gravity, that knowledge doesn't grow. Knowledge remains the same. Knowledge never grows. It's only your clarity that grows.
Then everybody already has that knowledge.
Yes. 70% that we all, 70%, 75% of what we need, that knowledge is there already. But the knowledge is obscured because of the power of the mind. The power of the mind is so overwhelming that it is obscuring it. It's covering it. That mind has to be carefully attended to. Mind being a very subtle thing, you should know how to attend to that mind carefully. And intellect knows how to attend to the mind carefully. Where to allow, where to pull the strings, where to completely say no. The intellect knows it. And because of this powerful intellect, the mind doesn't become that detrimental. That's why 70-75% of what I have been talking in the last 8 sessions looks like common sense, and you know it already, isn't it? Supposing anybody says, oh, everything is so new, sir, I will not, it's very difficult, because 70-75% is already known. The challenge is, what is known to you doesn't come to your rescue when you need it. It is not the lack of knowledge. It is the availability of knowledge when you need it. What matters in life is the availability of knowledge when you need it. And a human being has this problem. That's why Swamiji says, we are all very good philosophers as long as problem is another person's. When we faced with the problem, we collapse. Why? Because it is available. But when it has to be available to me, it is not available. You follow, Puneet?
Yes.
So intellect makes the knowledge available. What you know has to be available to you.
That's why sometimes we think, oh, we should have done this. Oh,
yes, exactly.
It's like in hindsight,
yes, exactly. Yes, in hindsight, you know it. You know it. The fact that you regret is the proof that you know it. At that point of time, what happened? The mind overpowered. It's an overpowering of emotions. And those emotions have been so unintelligently dealt with in the past. It has become a monster now. And that monster has to be carefully, monster has to be carefully tamed. You follow?
Yes. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, good evening, Swamiji. Balakrishnan here.
Yes, Balakrishnan. Yes.
Yeah, my question was answered partly due to Puneet's query.
Okay.
Which is power of mind.
Yes.
So my another question primarily was when we come to scientific inquiry.
Yeah.
Is it a scientific inquiry or any inquiry that will aid you to take a decision?
Scientific inquiry means all inquiry, not necessarily physics, chemistry. Science
Okay.
means the process of logic, reason, analysis.
Okay.
That's called scientific. All inquiry, all inquiries has to be scientific by nature.
Okay.
So when we say scientific, the proper use of logic, reason, analysis, then conclusion. From hypothesis to conclusion.
Conclusion.
That process is called scientific inquiry. So what we meant by scientific inquiry is the process, and the scientific inquiry happens in all human fields of activity.
Okay.
Even when my mom is cooking in the kitchen, there is a scientific inquiry there also.
Yeah.
There is a science even there, meaning what has to come first, what has to come second, what is the proportion, all that is involved in science, no? You follow?
Yeah.
Randomly, if you do things, you take here, you take there, then it becomes a confusion. So scientific inquiry means the methodology of scientific inquiry. A logic, a reason, a analysis. You follow, Balakrishna?
Yeah. And then when, yeah, please.
Yeah. Yes, Cholunga.
In that case, why don't we conclude with this stage itself and say that my ends are achieved, and why do I need to go into contemplation stage?
Because this inquiry about the external world trying to make life better doesn't give the inner peace and security.
Okay.
If this scientific inquiry itself brings about the peace and security that the individual is seeking, there is no need to go into the fourth. The problem is,
okay,
this brings about a better quality of life externally, but what the human being seeking, what is known as peace, security, happiness, doesn't come.
Okay.
So in order to reach that state of peace, security, and happiness, the person has to come to the fourth stage necessary.
Okay.
That's why fourth stage is the important stage.
Yes.
Because only when you attend to it, there is the inner peace, there is the sense of security, and there is a state of being fulfilled, happy.
Okay. That means we limit ourselves with our power of mind.
Yes.
When we say we limit ourselves, we don't stretch our mind a little further and achieve inner peace.
Yes. Yes, we are not doing it. We are not stretching it.
Okay. Okay.
Intellect helps us to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, you follow?
Yeah, I follow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bala. Yeah. Sharan. 1 second. He will unmute you.
Namaste,
Yes.
Swamiji.
Yes.
This is actually kind of a follow-up from Balakrishnan sir. It is on the age of contemplation. Then, as you were saying, like the age of contemplation is like self-inquiry. But but when we get the cause and effect relationship in scientific inquiry, how do we know that we have to go to the next stage, contemplation?
Because we all along, from the superstition to the scientific inquiry, what motive drives this? If I make the environment better, if I get better amenities and facilities, my life will be happy, better. Connected to the very first class. If I make the environment better, if I have a better object for experience, my experience would be better. And if that experiences are better, my life will be better. So at the first stage, the human being makes an effort externally to make the world better and better and better, so that in the better world, you will have a better life. And then what happens at one point of time, a person understands that how much ever the outside is made better, how much ever the outside is made to become the best, what is still eluding? Something internally. What is it? The peace, the security, the happiness. Since this is eluding, the human mind starts this question. where did I go wrong that I am still not getting these three? Because I have everything around me. I have made everything perfect around me. Still, why am I being disturbed? Question comes, no? Natural evolution. To that person, we say that is known as the stage of contemplation.
So,
Self-inquiry.
Swamiji, if the external environment has been fulfilled,
Yes.
and if I am happy with whatever the fulfillment that has happened, then
Yes.
does it mean that I have fulfilled the age of contemplation as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. You have fulfilled.
Okay.
Then
which
only
means it is undisturbed mind.
yes, undisturbed mind. It means you can be put in the best of situation or worst of situation. You are equanimous. You are undisturbed. It means success comes or failure comes, you are not disturbed by both. It's not that you don't understand the difference between success and failure. You understand what is success, you understand what is failure. Nobody is going to act for failure. Everybody is going to work for, everybody is working for success only. Nobody works for failure. Nobody plans for failures, isn't it? But still, these things happen. So, when success happens, you are not super excited. When failure happens, you don't sit in depression. It means you have a reasonable intellect functioning already. Are you able to follow? Sir.
Yeah. Okay.
It means there's a reasonable intellect already there.
Fine.
Otherwise, what happens? Success is exciting. Success, like remember when we spoke about the mind, the exaggerations. The success, the mind exaggerates. The failure, the mind exaggerates. 2, 3 success, the mind exaggerates. 2, 3 failures, the mind exaggerates. Intellect understands the difference between the two, but it clips the exaggeration. It means you are in an equanimous state. It means there is a reasonable, good amount of intellect that is functioning.
So it is a kind of a self-satisfaction stage.
Yes. Yes. A kind of inner satisfaction, a kind of self-satisfaction that comes out of one's own growth. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah. If nobody has question, I have one more.
Yes, please.
So, again, building up on the last question. Then
Yes.
so there are stages when Aurangzeb was there or prior to that, age of superstition.
Yes.
So maybe that's a primary condition, but were there individuals who were already in the fourth stage versus, is it like a primary condition we have, but the individuals can be in different stages? Or now, we have made the world so comfortable. So can we say that we are in third stage, but there are people in different stages, right? So is it like the platform versus the people on that platform?
Exactly. Yes. At all periods of time in human history, there were people at all 4 stages.
So that means, are we coming to a stage where then, because so are we also evolving while?
Yes. Yes, we are also evolving.
Okay.
We are also evolving. Now, take a simple example. Vedas, which is dated thousands and thousands of years ago, talks about not cutting a tree. If today we can talk about not cutting a tree and all, is understandable because we don't get to see tree only in the first place, isn't it? Now, what is the Vedic times? The Vedic times is only full of, the vegetation is so much around. At that point of time, I used to wonder what made them to say that don't cut trees. Are you able to follow what I'm saying? It means contemplative people were existing right through human history, and these people who are in this contemplative stages are those who have been guiding the humanity right through. Technically, we call them as Guru Parampara.
But then what after this then? What after the fourth stage?
After the fourth stage, the self-discovery. If you see the definition of the intellect, we spoke about the gross intellect and the subtle intellect. And then the fourth stage, self-discovery. Who am I?
Okay.
That is called anta, end. You come to that. That's why it's called the end of knowledge. And we introduced the word end in the very first session, no? Because in all other subjects, there is no end. It's like the horizon. It looks nearer. Closer you get, it recedes further. The closer you get, it recedes further. And here there is an anta. Anta means the end. What is the end? The self-discovery is the end. And that self-discovery is what in the definition of intellect. We said it at the fourth. We remember, Punit, I'm sure you'll be remembering. Gross intellect and subtle intellect.
Right.
The gross intellect has two parts and the subtle intellect has two parts. The last one, the culmination, the highest is the self-discovery. Where we said, who am I?
The root part.
That becomes the anta. Once you reach that, the end. That's why it's called Veda Anta. The end of knowledge, where it comes to an end there. In all other subjects, you can never have an end. Because it's more like the horizon. You go nearer, it recedes further. You go nearer, it recedes further. There is no end there. Here it's an end. You follow?
Yes.
So the self-discovery is the fourth stage is the end. What happens after the fourth? There is no fifth stage. Because if there is a fifth stage, 6, 7, 8, 9, then we are in that infinite loop. Infinite loop, and this peace and security and happiness and all become words, and our hopes and dreams doesn't happen in reality. No, then. Only if it has an end, these words, peace, security, happiness and all becomes a reality. It is the reality that Vedanta is designed to help us achieve. What in the language of Vedanta is called self-realization. Management, they say self-actualization, any word you can use. Yeah, you can say self-realization or you can say self-actualization. Words doesn't make any difference. But there is an end, there is a culmination. And the culmination is the age of contemplation. You follow? Did I help you, Punit? Yeah, right. Yes.
Rajagopal has posted a question.
Rajagopal. Is it possible for a person to have Sattvic Guna all the 24 hours? No. If you have Sattvic Guna, then you can't sleep at all. If you have to sleep for 7-8 hours, you need some Tamo Guna. That's why life is created in such a beautiful creation that some minimum amount of minimum amount of tamas is necessary. So a person cannot be Sattvic all the time. A person can be predominantly Sattvic. Because if there is no tamas, the person can never fall off to, I'm talking about even physical sleep. And the nature's plan is such a way that sleep is essential because it is the sleep that is rejuvenating. But if a person is only sleeping, what to do? You follow? So a person can be predominantly Sattvic all the 24 hours. A person cannot be only Sattvic all the 24 hours. It's not possible. Because if you can come to the state of one guna, you transcend the guna. It's called guna atita. You transcend the gunas and reach a state beyond the 3 gunas. We are not talking about the guna atita state yet. We are talking about the proportionately, predominantly Sattvic. Is it okay, sir? Rajagopal. Venkat. Okay. With this, we conclude for today and we continue with the 3 grades of intellect, the Sattvic, the Rajasic and Tamasic intellect.